Clearly, there is much more work to be done to close the accountability gap and to make sure that the views of victims and survivors are at the heart of our efforts to prevent and respond to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. There is lots to reflect on from this talk, which leads us nicely into the session of the day, where we will be reflecting, led by Kate Faraga. So, Kate.
Hello.
Hi, Kate. So the
How are you?
Before I get off stage, what could you say something about that?
Hello, I'm Kate. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I'm not sure if we are going to share my screen quite yet. Would it be possible for the tech people? Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Kate Farger. It has been such a pleasure to spend the day with you all, even in the background. As I said, my name is Kate Farrager. My company is Bespoke Skills. And this kind of sums me up a little bit. I've spent 20 years as a coach, facilitator, and trainer. I teach things like unconscious bias. I hold space for difficult conversations. And I work across 4 different sectors, the tech sector, the humanitarian sector, the political sector, and the creative sector. And I'm known across 3 different continents. I work in Europe, Africa, and Americas. And I'm considered challenging, compassionate, and bringing clarity. But my job today is very specific. It's to really listen to what was said and to try to give you some kind of overview about what happened today. So we started, and what I'm going to do is spend about 15 minutes exploring what happened today. And then we're going to have a little discussion with about 5 different people to see what they thought their questions or their thoughts for the day were. So I hope this is going to be really helpful for you. It started off with the amazing facilitation of Stanley, really looking at what is the CHS Exchange Alliance, what does it mean for you? And I love this quote about moving from rhetoric to action, and this importance of making sure that you are closer to the people that you serve. We then went on to visit the booths, and I don't know about you guys, but I met some amazing people doing the networking. And we also went on to have a panel discussion with these 3 marvelous speakers. The first one was Frederick Ukulel. I hope I've said his name, said his name correctly, talking about disability and the importance of policy change. He talked about the movement is about working together to champion the cause of people with disability, and that there are key triggers that can happen. So, for example, we need to talk about what's silent, talk about the things that are unsaid, and build that momentum so that there is that sustainable movement. There's a big talk, I think, a thread through the whole of today about the nuance of this approach, that it's a personal, bespoke matter for everybody. And that movements start from this personal issue being brought into people finding those allies, the parents, the friends, the peers, and looking for those attitudinal barriers to each other so that people can create the frameworks to support a strong movement, to enable, in his discussion, it was to talk about the disabled people, enabling that inclusion so that they can have independence in society. Secondly, we had an HIV activist, John Blevins, who also works at Emory University. Apologise if I've got a few spelling mistakes. I was typing this as we went. But he was a chaplain and came out as a gay man, and also in his early career was a buddy to lots of HIV patients. And he talked about the importance of the psychosocial needs in the people on the ground, and having a societal framework. And later on in the discussion, he talked about this importance of going from the local approach into the political approach, and the importance of the harm reductions models, and really making sure that this these socio-economic challenges were not getting in the way. And he talked about this idea of people getting their own local context support, getting people to go from the macro into getting access from local people on the ground. And also the importance of the lessons that's been learned, and also the importance of everybody understanding their own biases. It was a really beautiful moment when he talked about, you know, he's seen this timeline from the 80s, 90s till now. And although you can put it into a linear discussion, it wasn't linear. It was messy. Things happened simultaneously. And during times of change, obviously, those things can occur. But there was this beautiful, and Stanley picked it up in his wrap up, this thing about refusing the dehumanizing lie that lives don't matter, and this importance of developing this local context. There was another phrase that I quite liked what he said when he said, God has a preferential option for the despised, not necessarily the poor and those at the margins and who have been rejected and dismissed. God is found where they are found. And he said that that was the thing that kept his motivation, that was a motivator for him as a Christian, which I thought was a very lovely kind of lens through which he did his work. Then we talked to Clara about the human rights and the importance of their rights, doing the right thing to do and making it relevant and understanding their lived experience. And then the importance of the LGBTQ activism. I go on to listen to Emily's talk in the workshops, which I'll explore in a sec. So the importance that Emily talked about was brokering relationships with the LGBTQI community. And then they went on to have really beautiful discussion about, you know, why is there not inclusion, and this importance about moving from the specific into the political, and understanding that maybe there is a counterculture, but they need to be able to explain that to the political environment. And then there was the 3 workshops. I really want to get to this point because I think some of you might not have dipped in and out of them as I did. But in the first one, there was it was about where NGOs and communities overlap with these. I don't know if you can see that. I'll make it bigger. With these contributors. Janet Crossley from CAFOD talked about the importance of the CAFOD experience, about strengthening the volunteers and feeding again into this key message about feeding into that localized approach. There was then a wonderful story about from Caritas about the importance of how when volunteers come together, they can have such a huge impact together. And there was talk of them coming together to fix this roof locally. And really understanding the importance in the sum up of learning how to use volunteer management and how it fits in to the CHS Alliance's core humanitarian standards. So they looked at the importance for not overloading the volunteers, using systems, formalizing the relationships and keeping in touch. And hopefully you'll be able to see some of these things that I've captured after the conference, but there were some really lovely bits of information and extra papers that they supplied. And one of the key messages that they had at CAFOD was get in touch. They want to keep talking to all individuals about the importance of NGOs and local volunteers, and that's why they put their emails there. They want you to get in touch with them to keep the conversation going. In the second workshop, they talked about the importance of women-led organizations. I came in at the point where Saida Yasmin was talking about the importance of getting more resources to those women-led organizations, that they weren't overlooked over the larger organizations, that there were gaps in accountability, but that there was lots of local expertise that could be, with better resources, get improvement. There was also a talk of the importance of youth. I found was so interesting that young people are so essential as part of the first response, because he was talking about them being strong, being able to be vital, but also why they don't feel part of the whole response cycle. And that this could be a real opportunity to gain, for those young people to gain future leadership skills if they were thought of in that whole cycle. And then lastly, Anika Raman was talking about I won't go through them, but the 9 inclusion standards that she talked about with regards to the importance of really making sure that there is inclusion standards for the people with disability. You needed to identify and really make sure that the people with disability people were learning for the past and listening to their needs. This nuanced needs, this other real key thread that came through, I felt today as well. So the third panel was Nothing About Us Without Us. They were talking about overcoming inertia, including people with diverse sexual orientation. Again, Emily came in and did some really interesting discussions about making sure that people who had LGBTQI protected characteristics, that they felt sometimes scared. There was an awful lot of challenges even before a crisis, but after a crisis and conflict, the marginalization was even more acute. They often self-excluded from camps because of their own fear. And often they were accused of maybe things happening because of them. So therefore, they needed more protection. And there was an awful lot of looking at the language in certain documents. They did some research about if language was used in certain diverse documents. And they said that there wasn't that much language that was inclusive. For example, did it include things like this was for everybody, or just language maybe around pronouns and the use of inclusive language. Again, some of the research methodology they shared, they looked at 3 countries, 92 interviews, and he talked about the importance of the Cox's Bazar. I'm not completely familiar with it, but he talked. She talked about the importance in Myanmar, which I thought was particularly interesting. So she talked about Myanmar experience of verbal and physical challenges, and that some positive examples. There were some positive examples, but hopefully they were going to be shared at a different time. So she talked also about if you're not part of the data, you're not embedded into the solution and the importance of that. So these 3 really beautiful and important workshops led into this. I'm sure that some of you saw Jane's talk, but Jane's talk, what she talked about was this. If I go up to my more high level, talking about the importance of taking the victim rights approach, and the principles that are hopefully will underpin the nuance and the bespokeness for each individual situation. Jane talked about vulnerability is key to look at, and different contexts have different vulnerability quotient in a way. And she also talked about these 9 areas that she's looking at in this respect. I think it was, let me just get that language correct, because I do think language is important. She talked about the victim survivor approach and the prioritizing right. So she was talking about that she's making this victim rights statement with 9 core human rights. And one of the things that I think she spent a long time, possibly I think 4 years, she might have said, anyway, a long time to write this statement. And they're looking at respect, assistance, accountability, getting information, making sure people are heard, that they have privacy and confidentiality, that they feel safe, and they have the right to complain. So that's a very, very brief overview. And now I'd like to invite up to the stage 5 people who are from the board that have been listening in today, and hopefully by the end of the 3 days you'll see this format that I'm using. But if I can just take a couple of minutes to introduce it to you. So this is using dialogic technique of the work of Otto Scharmer that was mentioned. If you have gone to one of the booths, which is the Creative Hub, Tanya explains a little bit about the U theory and Otto Scharmer, and the work of William Isaacs. And we're going to do a little dialogic circle. Very simply, we're going to go around 5 individuals and ask them what their one thought or their one question was that arose from today, that will come from not their past thinking, but maybe their future thinking. This future thinking means that we have to be comfortable with listening radically to each other, making sure that we might get a few things wrong because we're trying to understand things as we go along. And therefore, we need to respect deeply where people are coming from, listen and respond radically without assumption and judgment. And try to, when we're speaking in this dialogical approach, look for I responses so that we're taking it from a personalized point of view rather than looking at it from this is what we think. It means that there's much more accountability in using I statements. So I think we all have to be respectful that there might be messy answers, because when we future think, we sometimes don't know all the answers and we're trying to pull the threads together. So if I stop sharing my screen, I'm going to now invite up 5 people from that we've allocated to ask what their thoughts were from today. So I'm going to welcome Alan, Boca, Colleen and Tanya. And I'm going to just go around in a circle technique and say, if I can start with Colleen, move to Tanya, Boca, we'll start with Alan because that's how I got up my screen. Alan, Colleen, Tanya, Boca, and then if anyone else arises, we'll go to them. But if we could start with Alan, what thought came from listening to today's sessions?
Thank you, Kate, and hello, everyone. So yeah, I've been listening to a lot of discussions today, and one of the things, this is now my 3rd CHS exchange, I guess, and one thing I always find quite interesting is every time we have these discussions, these meetings at the exchange, it seems we're all in agreement. You know, like we're always agreeing to each other that, you know, this is what we need to happen, this is what it should look like, and we should work on doing it. But as Emily, in her frustration, was basically saying in the panel this morning, why do we still have to justify inclusion, for example, in humanitarian action at this point? And I think what comes to my mind is this whole quote from the morning that we need to move from rhetoric to action. And what's the problem at the moment, which I could see from there are a lot of good examples at the country level. I think at the HQ level, we still try to have this discussion. Maybe there is a bit of disconnect sometimes still at the HQ level and the country level. And for me, like my main question would be, what do we need to happen for all of these things to actually move forward? Because as much as we would like to discuss all of this, it seems like we're moving a bit too slow. Yes.
Moving too slow. Thank you so much. Colleen?
Yeah, I think building, I think, on what Alan was saying, what really struck me in listening to this morning's sessions, but then also in this afternoon, is that we, as Alan said, we often are in agreement in these conversations, but I think we need to be bold and we need to look at how we change the structures within which we work and the sector within which we work in order to achieve the change that we want to see. And I think, you know, we can't just continue to try and put band-aids on the structure and say, if we do a little bit here and a little bit there, we're going to reach the change that we want to reach. But we have to be bold. And the other thing that I took with me, which is really exciting, is to hear panelists and CHS members being proud of being externally verified or certified against the CHS. And that's a shift from having worked on quality and accountability the last 15, 20 years in the sector. It's a shift and it's an exciting shift, and let's see where that can take us and to continue to be proud of that because, you know, I believe it does make a difference, as others have said that today.
Tanya? Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you. So one of mine today was from listening to John earlier on the panel and echoed by Jane just recently, the importance of how we use language. I think we got a very strong message from John around being cautious of how we don't dehumanize people in the use of the language. And then Jane, a very sort of stark reminder that she talks about rights, not about assistance or help. And I think for us at the CHS Alliance, including our members, I think we need to be really clear about when we think about what the CHS is trying to do, we think about how we're using language and how we kind of humanize people through that use of language. So that's a strong takeaway from some of the presenters today.
Lovely, thank you. Boca?
Bona.
I said your name correct? Bona, I'm so sorry. I can't read it, I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Kate. What I want to say is that when I was listening to people today, that stuck to me personally because I used to be in a position as a refugee in the past. And what I want to say here, I heard three things that I'm taking here. People in that situation, or when they are affected, they want to be in a safe environment. They don't want anything to be added to what's happened to them already. They have not chosen that situation. The second one is that they want to be in a relationship that is respectful to them. They want people to respect them. And the third one for me is they want to live again in a dignity, with dignity. And they want this dignity to be brought back to them. This is what I'm taking. And then I was also hearing about the trust that needs to be between organizations or people who are providing what we call aid with and the people we are trying to serve. So I'm talking to myself by saying, how can I now, and that will resonate with what Tanya was saying, and you heard that this morning, today, how can I bring back the human in the humanitarianism that I'm part of? So when I meet somebody, when somebody is in a situation that's put that person in vulnerability, I don't want to look at that person as a vulnerable people or disabled people or with another. So I just wanted to meet a human being, me as a human being, meeting human being. So that is talking to me that how can that's what I will work on to bring that in my work in the future.
Thank you so much. And John?
I got the message about change of mindset being needed and talking about long-term partnerships and trust and so on. But I'm impatient, and I've always been impatient, and I think my change of mindset, I'm going to become even more impatient. I think we've got to move faster and harder. And I think we've got to involve young people. Everyone I look around here, you're all grown-ups, you're all old, you're all getting your grey hair. We need more young people. And there was some statistic about a third of the population in Bangladesh is under 35. That's astonishing. And they're the people that we've got to start targeting. So my behavior is going to change. I'm going to become even more impatient.
Lovely. And if I can get to that point now, is that triggered anyone's thought? Would anyone like to build on John's thought? Just come in. Would like to come in?
Well, maybe I can just sort of add. I think I agree with John. We can't be patient anymore. We we have to push. We have to change things. And I think going back to the beginning also about the, it's not about inclusion. We know we need to be inclusive, but how do we do it and what do we do? And one of the panelists had said, I think it was actually Stanley said, what are the blinds? We have our own blind spots. So how do we address those blind spots? And I think one of them often is that if you are old and going grey, maybe you don't see the youth. We need to address those blind spots and take a step back and reflect, perhaps before just reacting, to make sure that we can address those changes we want to see.
Yeah. We'd like to build on that. Yeah.
Just coming in, if I can, just a little taking both Colleen's push for bold and John's impatience, and we need these board members pushing us for this. But tomorrow we'll talk about the kind of the revision of the CHS, which I think can encapsulate a lot of this. Like, we've got an opportunity to really drive forward what we now have known and learned. We know these pieces, but what can the CHS really drive ahead to kind of push for that change? We've got the buy-in, we've got the mindset, but we need something bolder and more impatient to push. And in a way, the revision can offer us one opportunity for that. And there's a session tomorrow morning where we'll be talking a little about that.
Thank you. Who'd like to come in?
No, Kate, if I may build on what
Yes,
Tanya,
Alan, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of saying. Like, although we sort of sound like doom and gloom here, you know, like we're getting slower and older and all that sort of thing, I think, and even if there is still a long way to go, I think we also need to acknowledge the fact that we are making progress. And we really need to look at the CHS revision as a way to build momentum and really take advantage of this opportunity for us to actually have our voices into that. Like, you know, no longer from the sidelines, like, you know, go into front and center tomorrow's session. Thank you.
Lovely. Well, Mona, yes.
If I can add to that, somebody was saying in one of the sessions today that CHS does not need to be with organizations only. So that needs to also to come very closer to people who are being affected. So what I would like to say here is, in this opportunity of revision, we also need to listen to what matters for these people and put that at the center of what we are doing. This is, and open our eyes very, very ready to see who else is missing as actor, because everybody who is affected is doing something to himself or in solidarity with others. So opening our eyes to find the actors that we need to consider and work with in that revision process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wish we had more time, but that does take us beautifully up to 2 o'clock. I hope you've enjoyed this very short dialogue. I did take a few notes, so I will add them to my screen and hope that that you can see them at another stage. Thank you so much, and I'll pass back to Stanley. Actually, what I'm going to do while we're waiting for Stanley to come is I'm going to just share with you that I have been writing down those thoughts. Don't know if you can see that. Could you just show that on the screen, if that's okay, my screen share? So just to say that I've been writing some things down as we've gone along, and I think that the key kind of points that have come out of that discussion is we can't be patient, we need to be impatient, we need to build momentum, no longer from the sidelines, get closer to the people that are being affected and open our eyes to find action. So I hope that that's been a useful summary and really beautiful dialogue from those 5, and I look forward to passing back to Stanley. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for this reflective and impactful session. And I look forward to see you tomorrow. We will start again at 10, and tomorrow 10 is Central European time. And tomorrow we are looking at how we can shift power. And we have a bonus for you. So those who can stay, please don't go away. We will have a graphic recording of the day by Alexandra Zafiro, who is a colleague of mine. So Ale.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you everyone. I'm gonna now share with you my graphic recording of today. So let's say that I offer and harvest as Kate a bit in a different way. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can, Alessandra. So okay. We're fine to talk it through. Thank you.
Beautiful. So I will be brief on this, and I've captured the most important concepts of today, starting here with the introduction of the session, where we talked about what CHS is a place where we learn from each other, where we want to be inspired and we want to take action. moving then to the panel about Nothing About Us Without Us, where we saw that it's important to move forward in this journey, to have participation, to expand the boundaries, and to create a supportive community based on empathy. Then after the break and after the workshops, we have had a video about ending violence towards children in Uganda, and then a keynote from Jane Connors talking about the importance of putting in the center the point of view of survivors and victims of sexual abuse and talking about their rights. And then we had a final reflection with Kate, where the main points were about the necessity of changing the structure by being bold and moving to action, and also a focus on the importance of using the language. So thank you everyone for being here today, and I give the word back to Stanley.
Thank you, Ale, and thank you for that beautiful harvest. Tomorrow we will start again at 10 o'clock Central European time, and we look forward to seeing you. And thank you so much for today. And yeah, let's meet again tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So just to confirm, we'll be starting again tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. CEST. Thank you once again to all of our speakers and everybody for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.